But I am very grateful for screenwriting, because what screenwriting forces you to do, screenwriting forces conciseness and brevity. Like, you have to be able to express exactly what you want to express in one line. And when I started off like writing fantasy, of course, you know, every burgeoning fantasy writer wants to have like all these sort of long expressive descriptions and like waft. And you can't do that in screenwriting, because you have max, 120, 121 pages. That is maximum to write a script, which means you have to be able to hit certain points by certain pages. And that forces you to be extremely concise and to have an economy of words. And so how screenwriting affected my writing is that it's made me a writer that's way more straight to the point, that has like a good sort of understanding of structure. And not only that, knows how to set a description fast. Like, I can give you exactly what you need to know in like a paragraph or less. Whereas before, I might take like a page, 2 pages just to get there. And that is the screenwriting difference.
So in the end, it seems that it's been a good decision for you, as now a writer as well, to follow those kind of studies. So, because I just noticed while you were talking, thinking about the book, that it's actually exactly the way you were saying, because as fantasy readers, we are used to all those kind of endless pages that describe worlds and describe places and describe things and describe characters. And I'm not specifically a fan of descriptions. Whereas, as I was saying, in your kind of writing, everything seems to, you know, just be very, very somehow contained in the characters, contained in the text. So as you said, maybe brevity is one word that would describe the way you are currently writing. And how have you decided to build up this kind of world that you are describing to us in your book, and these kind of characters?
Well, so I'll start with the world. I grew up in Sierra Leone, West Africa. I was born there. I moved to the United States when I was 9. And so where I grew up in Sierra Leone, I always thought it was very magical, because I grew up like, so this was my house, and then there was a marsh, and then there was the beach, right? And so like in the afternoon, like the water would dry and you'd walk straight across to the beach, or like in the evenings, you could sit on the veranda and you could watch whales in the distance. And so for me, and during that time growing up, my grandmother always used to tell me all these stories, these mythologies. And then my father also used to tell me stories about sort of like the grandeur of pre-colonial Africa. And I always used to be like, because like I thought he was spinning tales just like my grandmother. But as it turns out, the things that he was telling me about pre-colonial Africa actually were true. And one of the things that he was fascinated with, which I'm now fascinated with, is the city of Benin in what is now Nigeria. So like part of like my family is Nigerian. So we go there, but like I somehow have never been to Benin. And yet my father would tell me about the fact that Benin once had these walls that were once like 4 times the length of the Great Wall of China, 3 or 4 times the length of the Great Wall of China. You could see it from space once upon a time, right? And indeed, when I went and did my research, it was true. Like these walls used to be there, you know, like it is unfortunate because I think it was in the 1800s, the British came through and like razed Benin to the ground and like destroyed those walls, but they were there, you know? And so when I set out to write The Gilded Ones, I wanted to write a book that reflected Africa as I knew it. And granted, I knew that like the Gilded Ones is a book that examines what it means to live in a patriarchal world, a patriarchal society. And so because of that, there is a lot of trauma sort of like inherent in the book. But I also wanted to speak of like sort of the majesty of pre-colonial Africa and all the civilizations that were there. And so when I set out to create this world, I used basically Sierra Leone, where I grew up, Freetown, Sierra Leone, which is hills on the coast, and it's like lush and green, and Benin, Nigeria, sort of as my a touchstone when I was creating, particularly Himyra, which is the capital city of this place, so that people could sort of see what like basically my father saw and passed on to me. And in terms of the characters, so how I'll take a step back and say how the Gilded One started. So basically, the Gilded One started because like I grew up in Sierra Leone, West Africa, and I also grew up in Lithonia, Georgia. And both places were extremely sort of religious and patriarchal. Like Sierra Leone's basically a Muslim country, and Lithonia, Georgia, like I lived down the road from a mega church, from New Birth Baptist Church. And so when I was growing up, it was basically purity culture, you know, if you're a girl, this, if you're a boy, this, if you're, and all these things about like gender and sexuality and and like, and I always was like, why, you know, like, why this for girls and for boys? Why do you feel this way about queer people and and why? I kept asking all these questions, and you know, people would be like, oh, here she comes, about to spoil the vibe. Like, you know, like, why must you always ask questions? And it was only when I went to undergrad at Spelman College, and I took women's studies classes that I realized I was like, oh my God, all of this is a system. You know, it's a system. All this stuff that I've been bumping my head up against all this time, it's a system. And if it's a system, that means I can talk about it. And so that was around the time that I was deciding to become an author. And so during that time, I kept having these recurring dreams of a girl. She's wearing golden armor and she's walking slow motion onto a battlefield. But the dream always cuts out before she gets on the battlefield. But I remember she always had two swords. And I was like, wait a second, I want to write a book that explains what it means to live in a patriarchal world. And it has to be this girl, this magical girl, you know, but I didn't know who she was until film school, when I was sitting in class one day and the words dropped into my head and I started writing. But when I was writing with the characters, I wanted to have characters that seemed to me real, as per my experience growing up both in Sierra Leone and in Lithonia, Georgia. Because I know like a lot of times with like young adult books, like the girl comes out and she's brave and she's strong and she's but like that wasn't my experience. That wasn't the experience of like most girls that I know. Like, who comes out sword in hand? You know, it doesn't happen that way. So I wanted to show that slow progression. And so that's how sort of Deka came about. And then, you know, Deka's best friend, Britta, like she just showed up in that cart. Like I did not need to write her. It was just like everything was so heavy. And then Deka got into this wagon and there was this girl who just made everything seem funny, which is a lot of girls that I know, like who just are like, yeah, that's all good and well, but what are we about to eat? And I was like, there she is. And so like, that's how the character slowly sort of came about, was through this need to have girls that reflected my experience, you know, that weren't the YA, we're already here, we're already about to fight. Yeah, there's some of them in the book, but like, for the most part, these are teenage girls who are like, oh, he's cute, let's go kiss, or let's go kiss somebody, or let's go kiss her, let's kiss him, let's whatever, or what are we about to eat? And that's how the characters sort of came about.
It makes a lot of sense to me, actually, now that you're explaining how this come to pass. Because, as you said, usually in fantasy, it doesn't matter if it's YA or not. We have all these very strong lead characters who seem to be determined and to be ready for sacrifice and to go there and fight to the death and, I don't know, just be super brave and inspiring. But actually, life is not really like that, and this is exactly what I enjoyed partly about the book, that you surprised such natural characters. So this makes a lot of sense. As I said, I'm here just to serve as a warm up and comic relief every now and then. I would very much like for people who have joined us this evening to have their own questions for Namina. So just the classic, or let's say, rule applies. If anyone has something to say, please raise your hands. Do it physically so that I can see you, or use the Zoom option to raise hand, or write in chat that you would like to ask something, or just write the question directly, and then I can read it out loud for you. So I will just leave now the space if there is somebody who already has some questions in mind for our guest. Maybe anyone gathering up.
Y'all got questions?
No.
I got answers.
Yeah, we can go home. I think no, nobody. No. Okay, I'll keep talking then. But just so you know, it's already late in the evening. I'm not sure for how long I can talk. So yeah, so let's make Namina talk some more, maybe, since we are here. So we talked a bit about your beginnings as a writer and a screenwriter, and you explained to us a bit about how you got determined and inspired to write The Gilded Ones based on both your experiences with Africa and America alike. And I wanted to ask you, how was it for you to get the first reviews on your book, and to get the first criticism, and to get the first reactions? How was this experience for you?
It was both exhilarating and also devastating. Like, let me tell you, when I got my first bad review, I was like, oh, let me go back and write the book. Oh my God. Like, I am a super perfectionist when it comes to writing. Like, if you do not take the book from my hands, I will not be done with it. Right. And so when I got my first, I'm very happy that most of the criticism has been positive. But when I got my first negative critique, I had like a sexy French depression. That's what I like to call it, where like I went and I laid in bed in darkness for like a day, being like just really extra and being like, what if I'm like the worst writer ever? Oh my God, I suck. They hated it. They didn't hate it. What I find is that if people don't like it, they really don't like it. But if they like it, they really like it. There's very little sort of in the middle. But I'm grateful that most of the stuff has been positive. And I also tend to read reviews up to a point. I know writers aren't supposed to do that. But for me, I'm writing for an audience, like I am in the business of service delivery. I am delivering a service to you, my audience. And so I do read critiques, and I'm like, if I see it 5 or 6 times, not even 5 or 6 times, if I see the same thing 3 times, I'm like, okay, noted. For the next book, I'll work on this. But of course, the other thing that I've noticed is like when people really hate stuff, they really hate it. And so they'll take every little thing off there. So I tend to like take my critiques from the medium critiques, because that I feel is usually where the balance sort of could have done this better. And I'm like, all right, cool. I hear you. I'll do better in the next book.
Wonderful. Now that you heard that our author also can have a small depression while reading her reviews and everything else, so that she's pretty much human like us all. Still nothing for her. Great. Look, we have a question in the chat room, so I'm going to read it out loud. I'm curious to know more about how you created the language and the special terms that you are using in the book.
That's actually an excellent question because I didn't really create the language. So well, this is a question that people ask me a lot of times. They ask, was the mythology based on anything, and where was the language based on anything? The mythology I created myself of the Gilded Ones. But with the language, so I am a member of the Timni tribe of Sierra Leone. Well, actually, I have like 3 different tribes, but like, you know, you're supposed to go with your father's tribe because patriarchy. So I am Timni, Yoruba, Fulani. So those are like my 3 tribes. But Timni is actually the indigenous tribe of Sierra Leone. We're hill people, basically. We're like hill warriors who were like, you know, up there back in the day, running stuff. And so when I wanted to write this book, I was like, oh, what to set the language basis on? I was like, oh, set it on Timni. And so that's what I did. Like all of this quote unquote special terms are actually literally just Timni words. Like for instance, the word Watibera, which is the name of the school, literally means woman. Like that's Timni for woman. That is literally what it means. The only thing that is not Timni is actually the word Alaki. And so Alaki, so in Sierra Leone, we have about, I think it's like 17 different tribes in the country. And so just to pull back, as you guys know, tribes were actually kingdoms that, like, when colonialism came, the colonial masters literally just carved arbitrary countries where there were none, right? So like Sierra Leone, the mass of the territory used to be the Timnis, but there are also the Susos, the Korankwas, the Madingos, and all of those. We all were in that. And so they carved this arbitrary country and were like, coexist, right? And so all these kingdoms became tribes. And so each different tribe has like literally looks different, has a completely different language, and to some extent, a completely different culture. And the only way all these tribes could communicate is like when basically they created this country was we created a pidgin English called Creole. And so that's what everybody speaks, right? Most people, especially people up country, speak their tribal languages, but everybody speaks Creole to communicate with each other. And Creole is a mix of English, the different tribal languages, and also Arabic, because before the British came, we were actually conquered by the Arabs, right? Which is why Sierra Leone is majority Muslim. And I say all this to say that the word Alaki is actually Creole, but I'm pretty sure that the back of it is that it's actually Arabic. And what it means is useless. So in Sierra Leone, when people say, come on, I also with you Alaki business, they're like, get out of here with like your uselessness. Or like, you na Alaki mota man, like you're an Alaki, like you're a useless person. So it can be either joking or it can be an insult. But yeah, so that's where the word comes from. That was a whole, y'all didn't come here for a history lesson, and yet here you are. New thing of the day.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that usually words that have this al particle in front of them are of Arabic origin. So most probably you are, of course, right. So I really like this because I'm actually a translator. So for me, anything that goes with, you know, languages and linguistics is perfectly fine. So you can go on and on forever. But in the meanwhile, we just got another question, which comes from our Facebook Live. And it says, how important is your cultural heritage in your works?
Supremely important. And the reason for that is that, this is going to be a long answer, buckle up. I'm going to have to like figure out how to say this. So when I grew up in Sierra Leone, I was Timni. That was like my tribe. That was my culture, right? Because you take on the culture of your father. I was Timni, right? When I came to America, all of a sudden I was Black, right? And then the added thing was then I was African American. And that all of those are identities that come with certain expectations of who you are, right? People expect you to be a certain way. They expect you to espouse certain ideas, feelings, whatever, right? And one of the things that I swiftly noticed in coming to America and becoming quote unquote Black was that the idea of Blackness, as it is in the American eye, is that like it all started with slavery. Black people came here, they became slaves, da, da, da. Well, where does that leave me? You know, because it is part of my experience. And the reason it is part of my experience is because Sierra Leone, the reason why the capital city in Sierra Leone is called Freetown is because I forgot exactly around what year it was, but like basically freed slaves from America that were sent to Nova Scotia were then sent to Sierra Leone, right? So that's why Freetown is called Freetown, because when you went there, you were free. So not only that, but a lot of people from Sierra Leone were taken as part of the transatlantic slave trade, right? So I say all this to say that, yes, slavery, it is a part of my cultural experience and my history, but it is not in the way that it is for African Americans, right? But not only that, I really struggle and I have a problem with the whole conflation of just Blackness and slavery, because there are different Black people all across the world. And especially Africa is the largest continent. Like there's so many different types of Black people, right? So slavery is just, it's not like the have all be all of our experience. And so what I wanted was, it was really important for me to claim my cultural heritage, because I feel like so often like the nuance in our stories as Black people tends to be overwritten by just this one narrative of you were taken, you were enslaved, and that is your history, forgetting there's a whole continent of stories, of magic, of history, of tradition, of lore, of all of these things. So for me as an African, I wanted to make sure that I told different stories that reflected my cultural heritage as someone from the continent, so that people could see the magic of Africa, the magic of Sierra Leone, right? Because there's way more than like just like, I feel like, and this is the other thing, like anytime literally people see images of Africa, it's like National Geographic, where people are like not wearing clothes, which by the way is valid. Right? Like in my culture, like when I was growing up in the 1980s, it was not uncommon to see women bare-breasted. And I'm all for that. I'm like, yes, free, you know, but that is the only image people ever see. It's like the kids with like flies on them starving, or it's like, you know, people in huts and all of those, which are a part of our culture. But what is taken aside from that is the fact that like Africa has universities, has massive cities, all of these things. Pre-colonial Africa had all of these things, right? Like we literally had street lights before like a lot of like the mass of Europe. And these are things that people don't know because of there's the one narrative of what it means to be Black. And so for me, it's very important for me to highlight my culture and you know, not only show the magic, but also show a little bit like use that historical basis to show what it did look like, you know, so that like you fight against that narrative of, oh, it's just like naked people in huts. Because while that is true, and I do love that, there's also way more there. So yes. I hope I answered that. I felt like that was a question where I had to go from here to here to here to connect. But yeah.
To me, it actually made a lot of sense. While hearing you talking about this, I also thought that a while ago I went into this international project and I met a woman from Burundi And to me, Burundi was like something super exotic and very far, far away. And somehow I just imagined, mountains and lakes and stuff we learned about in geography. And then she told me that back in her country, before she actually migrated to Romania and she married a Romanian guy. But before that, she was studying law in Burundi. And she talked about how like the cities in her country were like pretty much like pretty similar to European cities or to anything that we had references to. And she was the first one to teach me that Africa is not a country like most of the world seems to be looking at it. Africa is actually a huge continent which hosts an army of countries and tribes and traditions and a whole mix. So it's exactly like you said, like you cannot definitely declare that, I'm this kind of thing or this kind of thing, or I just have just one heritage or something. You're just a mix. And there are so many things superposed in it. And somehow you just need to, maybe reflect all of them. So this, for me at least, it's like super interesting the way you are looking at it.
You know what's funny? You know how people are like, if I could go back in time and live anywhere, where would I live? I would actually want to live in like 12th century Nigeria, because they had a good grasp of medicine. They had very organized cities and great infrastructure, and there was gender equality to like a large extent. Not only that, gender fluidity. So I was like, you know what? I could live there. I could, like, if we go back, no, I want to go there because I know it's warm. I know there's medicine. I'll be fine, So I just sort of wanted to bring that to be like, as you're thinking of maybe I want to live in the medieval ages, I'm like, yes, but live in the medieval ages in Africa where there's medication and mathematics and all of this stuff, which people would never think about. And that's something that I had to learn in the course of my research of, oh, wait a second, this is where I want to live.
It does make a lot of sense when you come to think about it in these terms. We have another question coming from the Facebook Live. It says, would you explore other genres, or are you going to stick with fantasy YA for the rest of your life?
I definitely want to go to middle grade, but fantasy. I want to go to middle grade because, listen, man, I'm a fantasy buff. Like, I love fantasy. I am a cheap date when it comes to fantasy, because like literally you put a vampire, a mermaid, a dragon, hell, put a fairy in something, like I'm done. Take my money. It is a wrap. I am a fantasy person all the way. But I would love to go to middle grade. That's actually where my heart is. And I will write like maybe one adult book, but it would be like based biography of like my family. Which I think is like, man, like my family has seen some stuff. So I would write that, but that's about it. I don't really want to go to like adult. It's just children for me.
Wow. Yeah, this book about your family sounds pretty interesting. So let me know when you start working on it. Great. Yeah, I also love middle grade a lot. I'm just thinking that there is so much potential in it to start inspiring kids from a younger age to explore some stuff and to think about some stuff in different ways. So definitely, I'm very excited to hear this about you. In the meanwhile, we got another question which says, how do you see the world of tomorrow that seems more and more dystopic to us?
I don't know if you guys are conversant with what's happening in America right now.
Do you really want to go into this?
Oh,
do you have the whole day?
This question has me having hot flashes. Because I'm like, I literally wrote a book about this, and yet here we are. How do I see the world of tomorrow? I will say that right now, things are dire in America, given, the assault on gender equality, abortion rights, LGBTQ rights. It is just like being slapped left and right now. That being said, I am very heartened that Gen Z is the generation after us, because Gen Z is woker, queerer, has just basically has their head screwed on right. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like when they get in charge, things are going to be better. Things environmentally minded. I'm like, I am praying for them. And for me, I feel that all I can do is that I can write books and, point out things and hopefully inspire people to do things. I feel that right now, I am not so hopeful for the next year to maybe 5 years. But I think that after that, I am actually hopeful, because that means there's a different generation, a newer generation, more sort of young blood coming in. And that's all you can hope for. I am very, very hopeful. So I leave it up to you. I leave it up to you guys. I hope that we don't hand y'all everything that's burning. We're trying, man. I don't yeah. I don't know how else to answer that.
Yeah, I also work a lot with teenagers, and I can say that I definitely agree with you, because they're more articulate than we used to be when we were their ages, and they seem way more aware of what's going on around them, and way more aware about politics and about decision makers and about, as you mentioned, environment. And I truly hope that this will mean, at least for their generation, that things will change, maybe partially for the best. So I definitely believe also in the role of you guys, writers, as educators, because you said that, oh, no, I'm just writing books. But I think that this is a super important thing. And I just wanted to ask you if you feel any responsibility when you write.
100%. And I hope I'm just going to go and get my dog and be right back, because I need to hold my dog as I say. Yeah.
Great. Now we're going to get and see the dog.
Okay. Yes, I know.
Let's meet her. Where is she?
This is Nifty, everyone. Short for Thugnificent. She's very tired right now, but we're just gonna hold her. Do I feel any responsibility when I write? So when I was growing up, it was not a good time, right? I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, which was the beginning of the Sierra Leonean Civil War. And so how I got through those times was that I read a lot. I read exhaustively. I particularly read fantasy, because fantasy allows you to feel like you can do anything. It allows you to feel that you have control over your life, and that, you can at the end of the day, unless it's a George R.R. Martin book, that you will prevail and you will persevere. The other thing that I liked about fantasy was that, because it was always not real, you could examine things that were not easy, that if you just spoke about them as if they were reality, it'd be very stressful. So you could examine it through fantasy, because with fantasy, there was always that remove. And so when I chose to be an author, I chose to be a fantasy author for these exact reasons. I wanted to give a safe space to other people the way the writers that I had grown up with gave a safe space to me. And not only that, but I wanted to make sure that I used fantasy to examine the things that were hard to examine and to make it easier for other people to talk about the things. And so, yes, to answer your question, I do feel a lot of responsibility. I do feel that my work serves multiple purposes, not only to entertain, but also to inform, to educate, to inspire. I hope that, you know, when people read my stuff, sometimes that they'll go back and say, hey, this is interesting. Let me go do some research on this. Let me go ask about this more, think about this more. That is my hope, that anybody who interacts with my work, number one, feels safe there, because I always do want to be a safe space. Particularly to people who do feel disenfranchised. But not only that, that my work demands that you ask questions, if not of the world, then of yourself. So, yeah.
That seems about right, and I really enjoy this explanation about reading and fantasy playing such an important role in basically any kid's education, and mostly in those kids' upbringing, kids who are, I don't know, being in difficult times. Like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be something as dire as you lived, but even something like a small depression, or like it happened with the pandemic or anything else. And it's very amazing to know that you have books. And now we have Alexia who rose a hand, so I would ask her kindly to speak.
Hi, so my question is about your book. It's about the way that you're writing. Are you going to write like more book for this series, for the Gilded Ones?
Oh yeah, so the Gilded Ones is a trilogy. Book 1, book 2, and I'm about to get started on book 3.
And you're going to write more for this universe after this trilogy, or?
No, so after this, I want to go on to different universes. I will always create new and different and exciting universes for people. So I am very excited to have you guys enter my next universe. She said mysteriously, knowing what she already had.
And do you have like a top 5 fantasy books that you love?
Oh my God, why would, see, that right there is a mean question. That is so mean. Okay, like,
sorry,
I don't have top 5, but I do have stuff that I love. And it's hard to think of stuff off the top of my head, but I'll go. So I love the Raybearer series. It's by Jordan Ifueko. Starts with Raybearer, and then there's Redemptor. I love Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen. That's like mermaids. I love mermaids. I loved a Redwall by Brian. I can never, like, who can pronounce this man's name? I think his last name is Brian Jake. Anyway, the Redwall series, it's like 10 of those books. I loved all of them. It was like basically like mice and stoats and like all these little woodland animals fighting. It was amazing.
I'm translating that. Sorry.
You are? Oh my gosh. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing?
I know, it is. It is. It's super amazing. I'm really looking forward for it to be there.
Yes. So I love Ella Enchanted. I loved, what is it called? I used to love Lord of the Rings, but like, this is the thing of representation. If you're not, it's really hard to like stand hard for something when you're not in it, right? So I used to stand super hard for Lord of the Rings, like was first in line to see all the movies. And now I'm just like, I can't interact with that universe because I'm not in it. You know what I mean? And then also I'm a super, I tend to think of books and film and TV all as same. So I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. And then there's this anime series called Overlord that I love. So there you go. Also Attack on Titan. Let's add that to the list. Yeah.
And do you have any like advice for young authors?
Very much so. Yes. The first thing that I will say is like, you are only as good as your writing community. Writing, like people tend to think that, oh, writing is in isolation. No, it's not. Like I talk to my critique partner at least an hour every single day. You are only as good as your writing community. Make sure that you find your writing community and make sure that the writers who are critiquing you are better than you, and at least in one aspect, right? Because for instance, with my critique partner, she's much better at emotion, whereas like I am the type of writer where I have to layer action first and then write emotion over it. And I'm better at like world building. So we complement each other. The other thing I would say is get on Twitter, but only to find a writing community. Don't spend too much time on it because it gets really toxic really fast. And then the other thing I will say is you don't need to write every day, because like this is what people are like, write every day. No, that is excessive. But you will know when you're getting there, like how to know when you're ready or you're getting ready in terms of like to be able to sell books is when you've passed that point where it's hard to sit down and write the book, and when you've passed that point where it's hard to structure your sentences, right? When you can flow straight through your sentences and like not have to worry about this word, then you know you're getting there. Yeah. But also the other last thing that I would say is take care of yourself and take care of your mental health, right? Writing is a job. It is not your identity. A lot of times what people do is they are like, I'm a writer. This is me. And that's my identity. No, writing is a job. Okay. It's a job. Like, let it be a 9 to 5. Let it be I write these hours and then I'm done, right? It's a job. I say this so many times because this is the grand mistake that I made and a lot of writers make is that you're so desperate to, yes, I know my baby. You're so desperate to like get there that you basically conflate your job and your identity, and it doesn't actually work that way, and it's really harmful to your mental health. So yeah, it's a job. Yes, I know. It's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the questions, Alexia. This was really, really cool. And thank you, Namina, because we do have a lot of stuff that we like in common, and I'm really excited about this right now. In the meanwhile, we are getting some more questions in our chat. So just let me get back to them. Yeah, what was your reaction when you first saw the cover of the book? It's amazing.
Oh my gosh, I nearly died because like, so it was, I love all of my covers. But I loved this one so much because like when I was growing up, there were no books with Black girls on the cover. There were not. And even when I started to write, basically what you would be told is that Black people can't write books, and you can't write books. And if you do write a book, you have to like hide your name, and you can't have like Black people on the cover. So like for me, this meant everything, because here was a beautiful Black girl. And so like I dang near, like I cried. I was so happy, to see someone who looks like they could be one of my cousins on the cover of my book. I don't know how to tell you how much that meant to me. Yeah.
As I saw, there is also, I think, the same artist who designed the second book's cover.
His name is Johnny Tarajosu. He's on Instagram, so follow him.
Definitely. I think I'm already doing that. And speaking of which, in case anybody wanted to ask that, for our Romanian public, the second book is currently under construction at the publishing house. So it's going to be with us most probably during this fall. So stay tuned and follow the pages, because you're definitely going to find out how it's going. Back to the questions. I have another one for you. What character and or relationship was the most fun for you to create?
I loved Britta. I love Britta. And the reason why I love Britta is like, she wasn't planned, right? Like, I said this before, where basically I had written like, if you've read the book, I've written the whole beginning sequence where Deka finds out what she is, and then stuff happens and it's not pleasant. And then she gets into this wagon to be taken to the Watibera, and inside is this girl. And this girl has a funny accent, and she's very friendly, and she's just like a nice person. And that girl was Britta. And so Britta to me is just delightful, because even like in the worst thing could be happening and Britta will be like, but I have cramps, I'm on my period. I'm on my period, and she is delightfully and gleefully herself. And that's what I love about her. But I also really liked writing White Hands, because she is just very sort of mysterious, even to me. Like that woman is an enigma, and I really enjoyed writing her. Yeah. So those are like my favorites. I really liked writing her when she's at her worst, torturing Deka, my main character, and like just being like, I'm going to hurt you now. And I love that. I love that sort of relationship dynamic. Mhm.
Another one. Have you received over the years any writing advice that was useful for you?
Oh my God, I've received so much advice. One of the best advice that you could get, that I've like finally I started to realize how good it was, is know what your writing time is. What I mean by that is like, everybody sort of has their own circadian rhythm, when they're awake, when they're asleep, but they also have a writing rhythm. Like, there's certain people, sure, you could write during the morning, but it's not going to be as good as if you write, 7:00 in the evening, right? For me in particular, I am I used to be an early morning writer, and then I realized, you know what, I'm getting old, man. I need to like wake up in the morning and go to the gym. I don't need to be like waking up in the morning and working. Like, that's too much. But I am a morning writer. Like, I like to get stuff done earlier rather than later, because honestly, like for me, come like 9:30, I am like, it's a wrap. I'm done. I want to go to sleep. Like, I don't want to, so know what your writing time is, know what your writing circadian rhythm is, and honor that. That I think is some of the best writing advice I've ever received. Oh, and the other one is, and this is the writing advice I received in film school, is kill your babies. That's what they say. It's kill your babies, right? In service to your, what do I mean by that? So basically, if you love a scene, but it doesn't fit into like the book or the screenplay or whatever, sometimes you have to kill it. It's your baby and you love it, but sometimes you got to kill it, right? Because you have to do things that are in service to the writing, right? Not in service to the writing, in service to the work that you're doing. And if it's not in service to the work, even if you love it, you got to kill it. So everything in service to the work, which I think is a nicer way of saying things than kill your babies, because that just... Anyway.
Yeah, and I also think it goes pretty well with what you explained to us before, and I really second that. What you said about being a writer, which is basically a job, and it does not necessarily represent you, and it does not necessarily reflect you as a person. And I think that is a very healthy way of seeing it, because I think I've also had that sort of, I don't know, not necessarily a crisis, but at least a session with myself as a translator. Like, okay, the first question is, who are you? And of course, the first impulse is to define ourselves through our jobs and through what we are working with. But even if we love it, it's not necessarily the best way to behave. And then I really thought about that, and I'm being more and more with you in this boat, and I really thank you for voicing that. We have another question about the writing process, and I think it's very fitful, and then very fitting, I'm sorry. And then we'll just have a quick round because it's already 9:55, guys, here in Romania. And as usually, time flies when we're having fun. So very quickly, question: what's been the most surprising thing in your writing process?
How many people are involved? Like, when you become a published writer, it is not just your work. It is the work of your editor, your copy editor, you know, like all of these people, all of these people who have a hand in getting your book from start to finish. So like that was, to me, the most surprising thing, was like just how many people are involved, and also how long it takes, because it takes, like, especially for your first book, about 3 years from getting the deal to publishing. So yeah.
We say it takes a village. Another question: what do you miss the most from Sierra Leone?
Oh, easy. Weather and food. Like, Sierra Leone has the best food. Like, I'm just gonna say this, like, I have traveled a lot, extensively, and I might be super biased, and I probably am biased to a degree, but I'm also like a massive foodie. Sierra Leone has amazing food. It is consistently fresh. It's consistently well spiced and delicious. Like, I tend to expect like a base minimum of excellence in my food when I go to Sierra Leone. And so when I go to other countries and I don't get that base minimum of excellence, I get mad. Like, you've never seen me mad, like, if I had like a mediocre meal and I'm like, it could have been excellent, but you decided to just stop at mediocre. Oh no, we're having problems. Like, you and I, like, I will hate you forever. Like, I literally have vendettas against restaurants. Like, this is like my petty thing. I'm very about food. So Sierra Leone, so all this to say, Sierra Leone has amazing food. And then also it has like really nice weather and like amazing beaches, you know, like we have 3 seasons, rainy season, dry season, and Hamatan. Hamatan is basically when the Hamatan winds come down from the Sahara Desert. And it's like, you know, November to I would say February, so it's our winter, but it's the best beach weather and it's the best food weather, because like right now, as I'm thinking about it, all I would like to do is I would like to go to the beach and have a grilled lobster. Yes.
Some part of me, even if I don't know the foods, I just thought that you're going to say that. I don't know why. I just felt that you're going to mention it as one of the reasons. So I can definitely see it. And now I'm hungry. Thank you.
Oh, me too. Now I'm hungry. I'm like, damn it, now I have to go cook for myself.
Oh, but for me, it's lucky that it's already very late, so it's not that I can have a full meal or anything. So I'll just go and maybe have a snack on something. I'll see what I can find. But for you, it's not as lucky because you're near noon, right, or something, or already past noon. So
it's like literally lunchtime.
Yeah. Oh, snap. Okay, let me just check very quickly if we have anything else here. Oh, yeah. I think this is going to be our last question. If there is none else coming directly from the public. So it says, how much of your life experience is in the Gilded Walks?
a lot and not a lot. So basically with the Gilded Ones, the life experience comes from having grown up in religious societies and patriarchal societies. The life experience comes from having grown up in a war and seeing trauma and how it sort of proliferates in people. Like, so I use that, like I use not only the, like, you know, the trauma of my country, but also my own trauma and like growing up in these times in the Gilded Ones. And you'll see that in like how my main character, Deka, like, you know, goes through life as a person who basically has PTSD. So it is in that regard, I would say there's that. It's like, there's all that, and just all my sort of knowledge of pre-colonial Africa, and different cultures and things of that nature. So I would say in that way, my life experience is in the book. But then again, you know, it's a fantasy book, so it's like all different stuff. Yeah. So
I think it's maybe the best answer that you could have given to us. Thank you. As I said, guys, if you have one last question, one last remark, one last phrase, one last message or anything for Namina here, I would very much love to hear it. So I would just ask you to maybe raise a hand, make a sign, put a heart, show me that you'd like to speak or anything so that we know that you have this intention. Anyone? No, maybe. Okay, what are you thinking about it? Okay. Okay, so we have some messages in the chat. Sorina says that you're amazing and the book is awesome. You also have a message from your translator who's been sitting around unnoticed. I've seen you, Irina. I simply love translating the Gilded Ones, and I finished reading it in one day, she says.
Thank you. And thank you for translating.
And I also had one question in mind to wrap up our session. And this question is, have you ever thought about being involved in politics?
Ha! I have, because of my whole family's in politics. And let me tell you, it'll be a cold day in hell before I ever get into politics. I'm gonna tell you that. Like, so my father was like a minister in parliament, and my mother was an ambassador. Hell to the no.
Okay.
No, thank you. No.
You're staying very, very far away from it.
Oh, I will tell you, having the, like, that's why I was like, I want to write a book about my family. Yeah, no, thank you. Like, yeah. No.
Yeah,
Everyone in my family is in politics. That's why I say no, thank you. I prefer more civilized way of living, which is to write books. Yeah.
I was just going to say that, you know, activism can take a lot of forms and a lot of shapes, and definitely by keeping writing books, I think you, at least for us readers and other people who appreciate your work, you have made the best decision ever. But I just felt like asking it because it was really, really bugging me somehow.
No, I feel that you are absolutely correct. I think that everybody, I don't think activism is just making speeches or like marching in the streets. Everybody has a different form of activism, and this is mine. You know, I feel that with my books, I expose people to ideas and concepts and things that they might not have thought about before and might not have seen in a positive light. And so I think like that's sort of my role. And like, that's where like, I just want to be the writer who like exists somewhere, like in some beach somewhere, remote beach. And every once in a while I poke my head out and I say hi, and then I go back to my dark corner. And that's how I like it. I think that is my activism. Like when I write books, it's like I make sure to highlight certain people and highlight certain issues because I think that they are important. Now, am I going to do speeches about them and walk down like and protest? No, I am not. Like, because I'm a person who values my comfort. I really am. I like bodily comfort, but I spend so much time writing these books for that purpose, to have, you know, people who do want to do that have something. So yeah, that is, yeah, why. Sorry. Why, Niffy? Why? Why must you just really? Yeah.
I really feel like I'm speaking in the name of all of us here and all of us who are watching on Facebook and everywhere. And we thank you for being here with us, for having spoken so openly about a lot of difficult topics, and for actually inspiring us. I really believe it's very important that you decided to do all this that you do through your books. And for me, it doesn't really matter a YA, middle grade, adult books. Just keep writing because you're doing it very well. And we are very huge fans. And we are looking forward to also have the second book in Romanian and to have the third one and to see the movies if there's going to be movies. And I'm very grateful that you took your time to be here with us tonight / this day.
Thank you guys so much for inviting me. This has been amazing. You guys made my day. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you so much, Namina. Take great care of yourself.
Thank you. And if you say bye
doing your
too.
amazing work.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.